Yes, guys, welcome to Chasing Green Arrows. Just muting my microphone there. Guys, we are doing a special one-off stream mid-game week. I'm joined by regular co-host, Mr. Dean Jones. Dean, how are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, I had a good Christmas. Yeah, it's been nice to get back to the Premier League. I've enjoyed it actually. It was very unpredictable. It was pretty chaotic, really, wasn't it? There's a lot of goals involved. My Maddison gamble didn't pay off, but never mind. I was kind of prepared for that. So I'll have to assess how I move forward with that one. I'm going to speak about him in a bit too. But yeah, generally it was okay game week for me. It's still not finished yet. Obviously, Haaland to play tonight. Kind of doesn't matter though, does it? Everyone surely has him as captain tonight, so it doesn't really matter whether he flies or flops. But yeah, how do you find your game week?
Yeah, mate, I absolutely loved it. I mean, I did wonder during the World Cup that I enjoyed so much if I was going to feel a little bit underwhelmed by the return of Premier League football, but the Boxing Day fixtures didn't disappoint. FPL is back, a game we know and love. Much better game than the FIFA one we were playing. And I just looked at it and went, yeah, do you know what? I'm really pleased to have FPL back in my life. And look, it's brilliant to stream. We don't usually stream on a Wednesday lunchtime, but there's so much to talk about that we're doing a stream both today and tomorrow. So tomorrow's will be looking obviously ahead to game week 18, and today's will be looking a bit ahead and also digesting what we've learned so far in game week 17 as well. And I'm delighted to see so many in the chat already, guys. 70 of you watching. Do hit that like button if you enjoy what you're seeing. We're going to be with you for the next hour. The chat's super active already. I've seen a few mentions of my boy Kai Havertz in there already. Delighted with that. Loads of comments about Darwin Núñez. We'll be talking about him later as well. All the topical issues, Mason Mount, Chelsea as a team. So yeah, loads to digest. What were your main sort of headlines, Dean? Because from an FPL perspective, all those big names that we went for in midfield and even a lot of the forwards, they kind of delivered other than Darwin up top. But the big debate, Salah versus KDB, we still don't know the outcome to that. But there's a lot of talking points this game week.
Yeah, I mean, I was happy to have Salah in my team. I'm going to pursue with that. So that was good from my point of view. Reece James is an absolute kick in the guts. For everyone involved, Reece James, Chelsea, and all of us FPLers too, that have got him back in there. So we've got a new dilemma now, like who's going to take Reece James's spot in our team. That it's a conundrum for me in my team because like I've been weighing up whether to get Maddison out, but now Reece James is going to have to go as my transfer. So yeah, there's that to deal with. Yeah, generally I thought most people delivered for me. I've got on paper, I'm looking at my team now, it's fine. Like Callum Wilson didn't play, which really, really annoyed me. That's my biggest loss, really, of the game week. Because everyone else performed. Martinelli banged, Almiron scored, Salah, Martial, Trippier got 12 points. Like, it was all good. But then I had a 2-pointer from Gabriel and no shows from Wilson and Maddison, and that's just killed my week.
Yeah, I look forward to going through your team and my team in more detail to see where we blanked and where we hit. Guys, so good to see so many familiar names in the chat, but also some unfamiliar ones as well. Frederick Stinson watches this show, I'm sure, pretty regularly from the tone of his message, but being based in Thailand, struggles to watch those 7 p.m. streams we usually do. So for once, he's able to watch live. So special shout out to Frederick. Hope you're well there in Thailand. Let us know who you captained this game week, Frederick, and how you got on. Spartans is with us as well. Love that. We'll expect a little bit more poetry from Spartans throughout the show. Jan Paolo is with us. Thank you, guys. I've got
It's a good show up. Thanks, everyone. This is good.
It's a great show up. There's also CH Ghost saying he's new in the chat. Is that like a link to CH, but CH Ghost? Oh. CH is one of our regulars.
He's killed off CH and he's coming just to make sure we're getting likes. It's the ghost of CH, making sure we're getting new viewers.
Yeah, exactly. Lobby 724. We'll talk a little bit about Chelsea now, actually, because he says he knew Havertz would shine because pre-season form, well, there was only one friendly against Brentford, but he did score a hat-trick. And it was good, and he did have a good World Cup, Kai Havertz. Germany had a bit of a stinker, but Havertz was a standout. But Chelsea as a whole, I think we probably have to take it with a bit of a pinch of salt, knowing they're playing Bournemouth. However, you can only play as well as the opposition in front of you, or play the opposition in front of you. And Chelsea have struggled against teams like Bournemouth at times this season. But in the first half team, they blew them away, didn't they? That is pretty useful. The back four, 4-3-3. Pulisic coming back into the team. He had a good World Cup with Havertz and Sterling. That front three with Mount just behind them looked like a pretty dynamic front four.
Yeah, it did, didn't it? Yeah, I mean, it's hard to measure because Bournemouth were a bit all over the place in the early stages of that game, and tactically they approached it incorrectly. But it was a good start from Chelsea. The game was put to bed by half time, so a lovely position to be in on Boxing Day, and getting back to winning ways was what it was all about for Chelsea. To have a few good showings as well is really promising. Obviously, there's the blow to Reece James, which they're going to have to deal with Aspi for now, and weigh up again whether they potentially go for more backup in that position. Do they sign somebody else? We'll have to wait and see. But that is, yeah, Lobby's right. A massive loss to Chelsea, but it was good. It was a good way for Chelsea to get going again, and I thought it was particularly the first half hour of that game. I thought was a good watch.
Yeah. Massively agree with that. Guys that aren't already subscribing, I can see just from looking, we've got 3.86k subscribers. If we could make that 3.9k today, that'd be awesome. So
Yeah,
do
definitely.
hit that subscribe button if you can. Oh, okay. Spartans, nice. No poetry today. Being a member of the National Union of Poets, we're on strike in support of our brilliant NHS nurses. Love that.
Very good, Spartans. Very good. Yeah.
Never disappoints. I think we're going to move on. So look, coming up in today's show, we do have notebook eye test. We're going to be going through our teams, and of course, we're going to be answering your questions. We're also going to be looking, guys, at some expected data. I know what you're thinking. We don't do too much data on this show, but we have decided to commit at least 5-10 minutes of each show to pure, unadulterated data and stats. That's coming up later in the show. But first, we're going to go to Dean's notebook.
There it is. The old notebook is back out. Well, it's transfer season, isn't it, Gianni? So we're coming back into the most wonderful time of the year. So that is something to be excited about. And we've already got 2 transfers that have happened. Mateus Cunha to Wolves. I'd say avoid that one for now. We'll wait and see how he settles. 0 goals so far this season. So we'll wait and see. But the big one, Cody Gakpo, is joining Liverpool. Like an unbelievable transfer this. Like what a move from Liverpool. They are so sneaky, aren't they? Like the way they go about business is just so cool. Like I knew that there was some interest. There's a few quotes floating around from me that I think we'll republish yesterday from back end of November saying, look, Liverpool do like this guy, but at the moment, like it's as far as I know, they are just the other team watching him. I didn't realize it had gone this far, and clearly Man United didn't either, because that is some good Christmas business from Liverpool. And now I guess like this changes things too for us in FPL. They're signing a guy here that is one of the most informed players in the whole world. He's a forward that undoubtedly is a good fit technically for the way that this Liverpool team play. I think this is a really good signing that also helps them in the sense that Nunez just doesn't fit for me. Like Nunez just time and time again, he's just not converting. And look, he's still going to play for now because Liverpool have still got injuries. But having Gakpo in that attack just gives them something more technical that they've missed since Mane wasn't there, that they're missing when Jota and Luis Diaz aren't there. Nunez just can't give you that. And they've tried it with Carvalho. They've tried it with Elliott. They even tried it with Oxlade-Chamberlain at the weekend. Liverpool needed something else, and they have gone out and they have found it at £37 million. What do we think is going to be the price for this guy in the game? Because I think he's someone we have to consider. Like the stats from him this season are just ridiculous.
And he's going to be listed as a midfielder. I mean, he should be listed as a midfielder. If he's listed as a forward, we might turn our attention away from him because we'll just go, oh, okay, it's a valuable spot taken up, and we'd want him. He's going to be playing a lot of the time as a wide forward. So I use Luis Diaz as a bit of a gauge. I would say Fantasy Premier League should treat him very similarly to Luis Diaz, coming into the game with a similar sort of reputation, perhaps a better reputation because of the World Cup. But in terms of career to date so far, I'd rank him similar, maybe slightly ahead. I don't know what you think, Dean, to Luis Diaz in terms of reputation. So therefore, 8 million is Luis Diaz's start the season price. 8.5 maybe.
Mm-hmm. I hope he's 8, but I think you're probably right. I hope he's 8. That is my hope. If he becomes the new 8 million option, I'm jumping on it. Yeah.
And he'll be a
he's gonna,
midfielder, right? He has to be ranked as a midfielder.
has to be a midfielder, considering how he plays and how other people have been critiqued in this game. Like he has to go in the midfielders, and it just changes so much, and I think also will help Salah be optimized too. So I'll be even more happy to have Salah in my team now that Hakpo is coming in there. I think we should also look out for the fact that this isn't necessarily, probably from most Liverpool fans' eyes, like the ultimate priority or need right now. They're probably thinking, we still need a midfielder. I think they'll still go and get one. I think they'll still get a normal, regular midfielder that you won't necessarily want in terms of FPL, but you want to see in there for the way that this Liverpool team functions. And I think the fact that this deal has been done so soon probably increases the likelihood that Liverpool do go and make another signing now in Jan. Sofiane Amrabat is the one that keeps being linked, but we've got to be careful here because typically Liverpool are not signing people that they're linked with. They are very, very smart. So let's see what they end up doing, but keep an eye out for another signing from Liverpool, I reckon.
How do they do that, Dean? Because even the Darwin transfer came out of nowhere. I think Konate came out of nowhere. Luis Diaz, was on his way to Spurs in the summer, and they went early in Jan. How do they manage to do it so well? You just don't get the leaks like you do with other clubs, right?
You don't get the leaks that you get with other clubs. I think part of it might be to do with the fact the way that the Liverpool media is managed, so that the journalists that are closest to that club, you would have seen as soon as that deal was far enough down the line, they were all able to put out the news at the same time. So they were all kept in the loop, so that even if any of those guys whose job it is to find out Liverpool news, if they'd have got a sniff and they'd have started to check out the story, it's always in their interest to check it with the club first, because they don't want to put something out that annoys the club so that they fall out of that circle that gets these briefings. So I think that by doing that, Liverpool managed to, control the situation to a degree that maybe other clubs can't. And because you're so desperate for scoops, you tend to put the news out. I don't think the Liverpool patch necessarily feel like that as much. And it's in their interest almost to keep things quiet if they do hear about them, so that the club can go about it, try and get the deal done, and then let them know that they have the exclusive, along with a few others, obviously, at the time when it really matters. And that's the way it's played out for a few years now, and it works to their advantage. Other clubs, you don't see the same relationships between media offices and the people that cover. You generally, I guess, get more leaks. I don't hear that much out of Liverpool anymore. Like 4 or 5 years back, you get loads of stuff coming out of Liverpool. And I think it just goes to show the way that Klopp has also managed the people around him, managed the environment, say, we're in this together. Like, let's keep everything together. Typically, too, when they're involved in talks, there's not many people that actually are involved in that. So they keep it very close-knit. It's really interesting that they've been able to go about this, because Man United still thought they were in the conversation for Hakpo coming into Christmas, as far as I know. And by that stage, it was already basically tied up with Liverpool to do the deal. Like, they went ahead with these conversations as soon as they knew that Luis Diaz was out for a prolonged period. They went and got the deal done because they knew they needed something else to get themselves back into that Champions League conversation. So, yeah, it's really, really good stuff from Liverpool.
Yeah, love that. I mean, it's a huge transfer. If it happens for FPL, it will be massive. Or when we see it, when do we think we'll see him being available, him playing in a red shirt?
I don't see why it won't be pretty soon. Like he's been as soon as like we get to Jan 2nd and people are being signed up and their paperwork's all there, ready to play. I think he'll be in the squad pretty immediately. Jan
2nd they have a game, but then it's 13th of Jan. No, 14th of Jan is game week 20. So that's we'd like to think for that game against Brighton, we see him, right?
Yeah, exactly that. So you would imagine that what you would get here is probably, I would say the unveiling. They're not going to unveil a player at Brentford on the pitch, but like he'll probably be at the Brentford game. Yeah. And then the next week, obviously, is a game at Brighton when I think he'll be in the squad for that. Yeah, 13th of Jan. I think he'll be in. I mean, there must be an FA Cup game in between those, is there? Which I guess they'll assess to see whether it's worth him. I'm not sure who they've got in the FA Cup, but to see whether it's worth giving him a run out in that game to just start bedding into the side. Just trying to look here. FA Cup, Liverpool play against Wolves in the FA Cup on 7th of Jan at home. So that'll be your first sight of him, basically, I imagine, in a Liverpool shirt. But yeah, really exciting times for Liverpool on that. Just to gloss over a couple of other things before we get into all the details you want to address. I think 2 transfers really to look out for coming into the Premier League as the Jan window opens next week. Mudryk to Arsenal. This is going to be potentially one of the biggest, and again, one that from an FPL point of view, I think we'll all be captivated by, because it's going to be, if it happens, a huge transfer. We'll probably be looking at 70 million at least here. If they're going to get this done, a 21-year-old wide attacking player, probably playing on Martinelli's side most typically, which again messes us up a little bit, because what are we looking at here? Because Mudryk's not going to be coming in and just settling as backup, but he's going to be pushing to try and get in that team. So suddenly you've got a conundrum there. At Arsenal, we've all been very confident over the starters that we've got in our team, and you're picking Martinelli and Saka and Odegaard and now Nketiah, but before Jesus, thinking, right, well, that's not going to change at the moment, but it will. Like, potentially it will, and there's going to be decisions they have to make as they balance their season out. So I think Mudryk would be, particularly once we get to like February time, really interesting for how we consider our Arsenal options. But Martinelli's probably not going to like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's Smith Rowe's side as well. Like, I know Smith Rowe can play 10, but you're not going to displace Odegaard. So when Smith Rowe does get starts, it's often on that left-hand side. Like,
yeah, I guess the other way to look at it is like this is a player that's been playing in the Ukrainian league, and like, with the greatest respect in the world, that's nothing on the Premier League. And so maybe this is also about adaptation. And by signing the player now, you are also giving him 4 or 5 months to make sure next season you're getting the full and proper version of Mudryk, because it will be difficult. It'll still be good. And maybe it is just to have that impact from him in the games when they need a spark. So I think we will still be seeing Martinelli and Saka as starters. If there's an injury, then obviously he can come in. But also in games where they're finding it difficult to get that breakthrough, you've got a player that's absolute top class to come in. Look, 70, 80 million is probably, it's quite expensive for him. Like, he wasn't priced at this a little while ago, but Shakhtar have spotted a gap in the market here to just go for it. I mean, they've seen the money that a couple of other players have moved for recently. If you think Grealish or Anthony, even Darwin Nunez, like that, they'll have been looking at those figures and thinking, we've got to push the boat out here and see what we get. And the other player I just want to mention is João Felix. I'd love to see João Felix. And they're trying to push him here. His agents are trying to push him towards the Premier League. And at the moment, it could be anyone from Aston Villa to Man United to Chelsea. Like, there's all these potential landing spots for him. Imagine we get to a situation in Jan where we could pick João Felix in the game.
If he's at Aston Villa, I mean, that would be a joke, wouldn't it? I mean, they managed to get Coutinho from Barca, and now he's surplus to requirements, possibly. But yeah, that would be funny. I guess Chelsea are favourites, are they now, after the news we saw last night, or is it between Chelsea and United?
You have to consider with Chelsea, why does it make sense for them to loan him with an obligation? Like, that isn't good business from them, because what if João Felix doesn't fit in? What if he doesn't do well? Also, they're signing Nkunku already in the summer.
Yeah,
they don't really need all of these players the same. So unless they're getting rid of Pulisic and Ziyech at least, then there's no space here for all of these players. So that is a bit confusing. But let's keep an eye on this João Felix one, because there's something to be done. And that could be a fun one too. So look, these players, Hakpo, Mudryk and João Felix, potentially coming to the Premier League from an FPL point of view, all potentially as midfielders too.
Yeah, it's brilliant that we're talking about transfers with an FPL interest. And after all, that's what we try and do on this stream. But often we'll be talking about a big story that might be on Enzo Fernandez or Declan Rice. And you're going, okay, it's obviously a good news story, and we want to talk about it, and it affects the team and the output of the team and the output of the FPL performances. But in terms of the individuals, not so sexy. Well, the 3 names we've just discussed are potentially very explosive options in FPL, a bit like we saw with Luis Diaz when he came in January last season. Guys, I know you've got loads of questions around transfers for Dean, and rightly so. We'll perhaps save the is this player going to go to this club question, of which there's a lot of them and they're very good ones, till the end of the show. So we'll make sure we have at least a dedicated 5-10 minutes at the end of the show to get Dean's thoughts on all of those potential moves in the pipeline, because they're very topical indeed. And it's going to be a big January. Guys, we're going to move on. Favorite jersey in the background. Yeah, we've got a couple of comments, then we'll move on. I don't know. I just reset these this morning. I went Serie A only.
Mine is your Baggio.
Oh, the Baggio one that's my first ever shirt as well.
Oh, I'd buy that off you. But I like that.
So good. But
how much? How much do you sell it for?
I wouldn't sell it. I don't think I could sell that. I don't think I could. The Totti one's match worn.
Is it
him? And I'm like, that's pretty cool just because he's worn it.
Who's the one behind your head? Who can we not see?
Mihailovic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I put that up in honor of his death. Maradona's next to Baggio. That's pretty cool. That's a new Maradona shirt. That's last season's shirt. They did like a hybrid Argentina-Napoli shirt. And annoyingly, the club website, literally days after he died, was selling them at like 150 euros. And I was like, these are going to be highly collectible. It's a Maradona Napoli Argentina hybrid. Let's get it. And they played in that jersey just for 1 week, and they wore the black Argentine shorts and stuff like that. So I got it. Anyway, they all ended up on classic football shirts for like 70 quid a few weeks later. No. I was like, are you kidding me? I've just paid in euros like 140, 150, as well as shipping. And now they're classic football shirts in England for like 70 quid.
That is actually, that is a big shame. Yeah, good punt though from you.
Yeah, exactly. Do you guys think Kai Havertz looks like a guaranteed forward? Ooh, I will let you know in the next section, because next up, we've got my eye test report, and I'm certainly going to be talking about Kai Havertz. Have to start with Kai Havertz. Eye test report. If you're new around here, we do it on every review stream, as well as Dean's notebook, 2 regular features on the review streams. So 3 players I'm picking out for you that have caught my eye. And I don't like to always go with obvious. So I'm not going to give you Haaland, Salah and Rashford every week. But Havertz, despite him playing for a big team as the number 9, he hasn't had the love in FPL. He has got 3.8% ownership, and I'm sure that was a lot lower yesterday. He played up front. We thought he would, because he scored a hat-trick against Brentford, but it was a massive, massive risk going for him, because we just didn't know if he was even guaranteed to start. Aubameyang has, of course, had the time off, but he looked good. And at times we have seen Havertz in a Chelsea shirt playing number 9 look very good. But what he needs is a run of games in the same position with the team playing the same formation, the same style of play. And often at Chelsea, we haven't had that. But I think that front 3 that we saw yesterday, of Pulisic one side, Sterling the other, feeding Havertz, and Mount at times, a bit like Bruno at United, was so far advanced, a bit like De Bruyne at times at City, became sort of playing off the number 9 shoulder. So really central, really high, we saw Mason Mount. And we've seen that with Bruno, we've seen it with De Bruyne, and it makes these guys great FPL picks. And for that reason, I think Mount is still a very, very good option, as good an option as Havertz. But Havertz, he got a couple of big chances. He was unlucky not to get the second assist, because that was never a foul, and arguably it could have been a penalty, and then Pulisic tucks it away and Havertz got the last touch. But a very good all-round performance. In that first half, Chelsea blew Bournemouth away. And look, I don't know if this Chelsea team are going to go up against strong opposition and beat them. But for as long as the fixtures are green, they play Forest next up. Then it's a double game week with Man City and Fulham. And then it's Crystal Palace, Liverpool, and then Fulham again. So the fixtures are so good. As long as this guy's starting, he's a really good option. What's your take, Dean, from a neutral perspective? Like, Chelsea haven't got an out-and-out number 9, but I think this guy's best position is now a number 9, and I think Germany think that too.
Yeah, I don't know where his best position is, and I think that they're trying to figure out if this is it right now. I think that's the biggest problem. We all know that Havertz is great. When he moved to Chelsea on our podcast, we were talking about this guy could potentially become a Ballon d'Or winner if he fulfills his potential. If he finds the right role, Chelsea have signed a guy that has the potential to go on and win the Ballon d'Or one day. And we've seen flashes of it. There's no doubt about his technical ability, about the footwork he has in small spaces is ridiculous. He's got great ingenuity. He's just a really, really clever footballer. And because of that, he has this capability of getting into good positions and finding smart finishes.
Yeah.
But he's not a typical number 9 by any stretch of the imagination. And I guess this is the moment when you wonder, like, but is that what Chelsea want? Is this what Graham Potter wants from this team? I wasn't sure it was, but you look at that performance and you think, okay, let's keep going with this and see how far we can push from here, because there's no reason to change things until you're not firing, basically. And in the next game against Nottingham Forest is undoubtedly a game when you continue to keep things going there. And then I guess the Man City game is when you really find out whether this system is working and whether this is a strong enough front three. Because, yes, Pulisic can turn it on against Bournemouth. Yes, he'll probably turn it on against Nottingham Forest. Can he still do it in the big games? There was a spell where Pulisic was very reliable and, deciding big games. It was the end of that season 2 or maybe even 3 years ago now. I can't remember. But he was really decisive. That's what Chelsea need to find now. Havertz has to go forward as the number 9, but we know that they are looking short term at least for an option to have one more forward in that line.
Yeah. Kai Havertz, guys, when he moved to Chelsea, all the big teams in Europe wanted him. Like, make no doubt about that. So I see Nuclear mentions maybe taking it too far with the Ballon d'Or line. No, what we're saying is when he went to Chelsea, there was talk that this guy could be a future Ballon d'Or winner. And I still think there's a hope that player is still in there. He's 23 years old. He's 23. He's 24 next summer. He's an elite player that scored a winner in a Champions League final already. He's a regular starter, if not Germany's best player on current form at the World Cup. I think he was Germany's best player. He's taken a little time to settle in. He's had a lot of different managers and a lot of different systems, and he's played in a lot of different positions. But his time will come, and I genuinely think he has a very good chance of being and becoming that sort of player where we're talking about him as a potential Ballon d'Or winner one day, because he's got the attributes. And in all those lists, when he moved to Chelsea, you see those top 5 kids in the world and those sorts of rankings. Dean, I know you're well accustomed to those on your pod. Havertz was featuring on a lot of those. And he absolutely deserved it. Whackim asked about Darwin. We'll get to some of your questions, guys, soon. I'm going to just keep on the trail of my watch list. So we've obviously spoken about Havertz, who's pretty obvious I was going to go there. He got big points. But now I'm going to give you a player that didn't get big points, but I do think he should be on our watch list. And that is a guy that, again, had a good World Cup, but he's a real differential in FPL. 0.2% owned. He's 4.9 million. He's a midfielder. Any guesses who I'm talking about? This is a really tough one. He had a good World Cup. He's 4.9. He's a midfielder, and he's 0.2% owned. If anyone in the chat gets anywhere near it in the first couple of minutes, in the first 10 seconds,
I don't know this.
Sado, Mark. Although, Mark, you're close with Caicedo. That might give you a clue. You're looking at the right club.
Oh, was it Trossard?
Spartans has got it. Matoma.
Oh, Matoma. Blimey.
Matoma is a 4.9 midfielder, and he's not 2% owned. And look, Matoma doesn't always start, and he rarely gets 90. Well, I think for the first time ever on Boxing Day, he got 90 minutes. Yeah, just looking now. It's his first 90 minutes, game week 17 against Southampton. That looks really good for me. Like, if he's going to become a nailed starter and a nailed 90-minute man, he's someone worth looking at 4.9 million. Like, he's such a busy player. I looked at the touch and heat maps. He was left of a front three, and he kind of stayed there all game. The fixtures aren't brilliant for Brighton, but the reason we like Brighton players, and we'll talk more about this in tomorrow's show, it's very, very, very likely that Brighton in game week 21 get a double game week. They could even, slim chance, get a triple game week. The idea of a double game week for Brighton in 21 is pretty likely. Like, it's almost guaranteed.
Where does the triple come from?
So there's time to put in a triple. I think that owed a couple of fixtures. It's like Everton and West Ham, and it's something like a really long game week where they could add in that third game. But we don't know when they'll even add the 21 games in. Probably not till after the FA Cup. But I do think we can start lining up a couple of options within that Brighton team and going, who do we want? And I know many will flock to Lewis Dunk or Trossard, but Matoma's worth monitoring. And let's just keep an eye on those minutes. If he's going to become a 90-minute man, I think we like him.
Interesting.
And then next up, I've gone to Arsenal, and a player that is getting a bit of love now, but perhaps hasn't been in FPL this season. His points and his output is very similar to Martinelli. He's a similar price to Martinelli, and that is Odegaard. And again, like Lobby 74 just mentions Odegaard there in the chat. I just was blown away by his performance on Boxing Day. I know there's a player there, like we can all see, like this guy's elite or very close to it. And Real Madrid paid crazy money for him as a 16-year-old. And he didn't quite make it there. Maybe it was too much too soon. But watching him play and watching this Arsenal team, who when they went 1-0 down to West Ham, you're just so confident they're going to come around and win that game in the second half. Like they're a team now, despite being really young. And perhaps you look at them and go, is there enough leaders in that team? Are they too young? But you still look at it and go, no, they're going to turn this round. And they go and get 2-3 goals fairly quickly. And Odegaard's just the heartbeat, isn't he? So sure, Saka and Martinelli and Nketiah are all really good options. But seeing Odegaard as a goal threat, and perhaps it's me now, I'm scouting him from FPL, that I'm watching him slightly differently, but seeing how involved he is with both from a creativity point of view, but also shots, I look at it and go, I think he's a better option than Saka and Martinelli on current form. He's also the cheapest of the three. So I like that option a lot. And I do think if I do sell Martinelli, because I need to take an Arsenal player out for a couple of weeks to say get a Mason Mount, when I jump back on Arsenal, it'll be Odegaard to go to.
Yeah, I was very close to picking him in the last when we had unlimited transfers. I almost went with Odegaard and I switched back to Martinelli. But as soon as Arsenal scored that first goal, it was Odegaard with the assist. I was like, oh, no, have I messed up here? Luckily, I got away with it. But yeah, I think he's a fantastic pick, and he's going to play every single game, isn't he? Like almost every minute of every game too. Like brilliant.
Yeah. I guess that's a slight risk with someone like a Martinelli. Should they have January transfers in, and when Smith Rowe's back, like sure he's going to be a starter, but he might be like first sub and he might get a lot of 70-80 minute appearances. Well, you just know Odegaard's 90 every single week, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Nuclear's gone to the Real Madrid line about Odegaard breaking in. Yeah, it's a fair point. Like that midfield was class, but look who they've gone and bought. Like they've gone and bought Camavinga and Tuachemi, who I can never pronounce his name, who are both a similar age to Odegaard now, and spent a lot of money on those two.
Yeah, I mean, long term, I think Odegaard would have been great in that Real Madrid team, and it might even be one of those situations where he ends up returning there at some point. But yeah, I mean, Arsenal have got a great business. There was so much talk about Odegaard for so long, and just wondering where he would actually manage to thrive. He's absolutely loving it at Arsenal, and another reason I think that is to back him to do well for the rest of the season. I can't pronounce that name. It's Tchouaméni.
I always say Tua instead of Chua. I think that's where I'm going wrong. It's TCH, isn't it?
It's TCH. Yeah.
Okay. You'll have to keep correcting me on that one, mate.
Luckily, he's not in the Premier League. We don't have to worry.
Yeah, true. No World Cup fantasy for a while.
No.
Good stuff. So Havertz, Odegaard, Matoma, my three this week. Guys, we're going to have a look at how Dean and I got on. And then, of course, we're going to be answering your questions and looking at some expected data. Of course, a lot of your questions will be veered around transfers for Dean as well. And that January window opens very, very soon. Excited about that. But first up, we've got Pimp My Team.
Yeah, there it is. Mainly good. Just let down by 3 or 4. Annoying, but I've got to 58. I've got subs on the bench that will bring me above 60. So then Haaland will score a hat trick tonight and get me to 90. So that'll be fine. But yeah, like generally, I'm just obviously like this line of players of Wilson, Maddison, and James is horrifying. Like that's horrifying to look at right now. I knew Maddison was a gamble. We talked about that before. I did almost take him out. Literally after the show, I was sitting there on my phone, tinkering with it and thinking, do I sub him out? Looking at who I could sub him out for. And I did nearly do it. And I thought, no, just leave it. It doesn't matter. Like if Maddison misses this game, he'll be back for the next one. And he's got a lot to go for here. So I don't know if I'm sticking with him. And to be honest, I probably have to now because of these situations with James. And I don't even know what's going on with Wilson. I haven't even looked into this properly. So that's my dilemma. The rest of the team, like luckily Martial's scored the goal I needed him to score. He's fine for now. Yeah, generally, I think this is fine. I don't have too many concerns. In my mini league, I stayed where I was. I think generally I was above average, so it's okay. Yeah, average score was 46 so far for this week. I say with subs, I'm into the 60s, so this is okay.
Yeah, I think the Wilson news is something. It's not an injury. It's something like he had a cold or a flu, and they just needed to build him up a little bit. He wasn't ready. He wasn't match ready. So Wilson's
So
a
that's
tricky
fine.
one because whilst that's good news that he'll be back soon, you've got so many forwards at a similar price point that have delivered in game week 17, where you go, do I move him to a Havertz or to a I don't know. I mean, a Mitrovic would be the obvious move, but I know your take on that, Dean. Would you consider going Mitro?
By the
I
way,
mean,
sorry to
he was
everyone
so
on the
good.
Mitro. Like that came out of nowhere. He basically just declared himself fit. So
Did
they
he?
were like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because
So they were like,
you weren't the
it,
only one, mate. Every commentator was saying Mitrovic won't play.
he
Like,
wasn't expected to, and like they kind of left it in his hands, and they knew he was managing the situation. They knew that he wasn't far off, but he hadn't done too much because they were being careful around it, and he was fine. So yeah, I mean, it turned out to be a great moment for Fulham because it definitely helped massively in that Crystal Palace game. And obviously, you can't account for Palace going down to 9 men, but Fulham probably would have won that game anyway. Such was the dominance that they had over them in that match. Callum Wilson does play against Leeds at home next, so I'm going to stick with him. I know that Fulham have Southampton at home next, and that should probably be seen at this stage as a banker. Southampton are an absolute mess.
yeah,
They're bottom of the league. I mean, talk about needing a big transfer window. They do need a big transfer. They need some personality. They need some goal scorers. They need a bit of everything. Southampton, at the moment, they are destined for relegation. It's looking a real mess for them. And so, yeah, so I'll keep Callum Wilson. I'm assuming Reece James is going to be out, and I'll have to consider that position. Potentially, I could bring him. Well, Bueno. The thing is, Bueno's got Man United at home. I actually have that on upset alert. I can
me
see
too.
Wolves. I can
Me
see Wolves
too.
doing something here.
Yeah,
So I'm not totally against bringing him in for the fixture and using it to swap out my Madison into someone else. So that's something I might actually be looking at because, yeah, I don't know why, but I just feel like Wolves have had a mentality switch. Their performance against Everton wasn't like, world changing, but it was from their point of view, like mentality wise, brilliant because they've got over the line late on. They've been competitive. They've come through a tough game against the team that is pretty much where they are in the league, and now they've got a great chance of getting out of it. And I think they've got Man United and they've got Liverpool coming up, and I think they'll look at those as scalps that can really rejuvenate their season. So I might actually just bring Bueno in for the next game and take a bit of a gamble on that.
yeah. I mean, Andreas is a good one to bring in as well. Like
Andreas is a good one
you've
to bring in
got
for
a good
Madison. Yeah, that's
bench.
true. Yeah,
It's a
that is
good
true.
bench. Like those flags wouldn't bother me too much. So yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see what you do in tomorrow's stream. We're going
Yeah.
to be streaming again tomorrow at 7 p.m. Guys, we'll show you my team as well. I'm delighted with my game week so far, and as with everyone, I'm waiting on Haaland captain tonight. But the big one for me
De
is I'm
Bruyne
waiting on
and
De Bruyne.
Cancelo too.
Yeah, I'm waiting on. I mean, the De Bruyne swing versus Salah will hurt if he blanks because what was Salah, a 12-pointer? So
Mm-hmm.
I need something from De Bruyne, and I think I'll get it. I'm super excited for tonight's game. And then Cancelo as well. So yeah, 3 to play with Haaland. I guess the big one for me was Havertz, like not just because it's 12 points, but it's 12 points that no one else, or it felt like no one else was getting because he was such a differential. Rashford coming up trumps. We knew that. Kepa, how good was that? And look, so many of us have got Kepa, and it's just showed like it was the right call gambling on Kepa.
Yeah.
Got the save points, got in bonus. And by the way, guys, the way the bonus point system works for goalkeepers, it's not judged purely on saves. So Kepa made 4 saves, which was great. It got him a save point and it did get him into the bonus. But also his pass completion was high. He does get the ball a lot, and Chelsea do want to play out from the back. So you get a lot of those 10, 20-yard passes to your centre backs or your full backs from Kepa, which is great because then the pass completion is high and the number of passes is high. And then you also get points for things like claims and crosses. Again, he was pretty useful. So I do think Kepa points will continue, and the Kepa ward is the the right double up to go for those looking to save a bit of money on goalkeepers, but also just points. So there's a lot that have gone Kepa as a second choice and someone like an Ederson as first choice. I would argue the ceiling with Ederson is lower than Kepa. Like Ederson will get more 6-pointers, clean sheets, but he won't get a huge amount of saves and he won't get a huge amount of bonus.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Almiron as well, Dean. Like Newcastle have just carried on, haven't they? Like that goal was so good. I watched it from all different angles and the build-up play and the link between Bruno G and Almiron was so lovely to watch, and poetry emotion watching Newcastle at the moment.
They're so good to watch, and like the spirit and everything about them is just there at the moment. Second in the Premier League. Almiron's so important for him to make sure he carried on where he'd left off, because you never know if it's going to fall away. But the really interesting thing too now for Newcastle is they will look to make 1 or 2 changes in the transfer window. Like they are gradually going about this and making their squad and their first team particularly better and better and better. They'll be really, really careful about how they do it, but they are going into the market for at least one more player. And I'm told that James Maddison is still a player that they're really, really interested in. And if he does play, then I'm told it will be on the right side of the attack. So typically you think of Maddison and you think he's going to be the 10. He wants to be central. Well, Newcastle don't really play like that. And there's not really that sort of role. But his cleverness and his creativity and obviously his crossing ability from the right is something that I think Eddie Howe has highlighted as something that could be really, really important to this team if they can get him. He's going to be a lot of money, 60 million plus, and it's so difficult to get players out of Leicester. Like there's a lot of hurdles to get over there. But if you think Newcastle are good now, imagine they just made one change and pushed James Maddison into the starting lineup too. You're looking at a really special season here for Newcastle, and their assets are ones that we really need to make sure we've got.
Yeah. Interesting, because right-hand side is where Almiron's been doing so well, but maybe Almiron can play on the left. I haven't.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Isak's still to come back too, and so it'll be interesting to see, is he competing just with Wilson for that central role, or if they don't get Maddison, I guess Isak ends up going wide while Wilson's scoring goals.
Yeah. There we go. And yeah, they need a deep squad. Like this is a team that will be playing in Europe next season. Like whether or not it's Champions League or Europa, we don't know. But they're very likely to be playing midweek fixtures very often. So you do need a bigger squad. Because you raise a good question, Mark, but you've got to look beyond that. Look at all the top teams. They have layers. Pulisic can't get anywhere near the Chelsea 11 until this week.
Yeah. Jerry asked about Bruno and Jones. I mean, Longstaff is the guy that is being raved about at the moment. I mean, I didn't watch the entirety of the Newcastle game, but all of the press on the back of Newcastle's latest game is basically just lauding Longstaff as like the guy that is doing special things in that Newcastle team, and they feel like he's kind of the epitome of how you can improve and even thrive under Eddie Howe. So that's something to consider.
Yeah, and Bruno Guimaraes is such a talent. I think he walks into any Premier League team, into the 11 of any. Jorginho being heavily linked with Newcastle the last couple of days, I saw. He's out of contract in the summer. It would be a ton of money, wouldn't it? Like on a free transfer.
I don't think that's going to happen.
His wages.
I'm not convinced about that one.
I'm not sure he's going to want to go to Newcastle. I think he'll want to go back to Italy.
I think he'll go back to Italy. Yeah, I agree.
And he's got suitors there apparently too. Also playing black and white. I think Juventus have also been linked with him over the seasons. He's only 31, Jorginho. One of my faves. Anyway, we'll talk a little bit about Darwin in tomorrow's stream, I think. So we're running tight on time and I want to get to all those questions on transfers. But I also want to mention XG, guys. So just thought it'd be really cool to look at the teams that have done really well so far this season. So far, it feels like this season in game week 17. It feels like a new season, doesn't it? So just want to point out the top 5 performing teams. And look, Liverpool, Fulham, United, Arsenal, they all got 3 goals, right? But their expected data was also very good. So Liverpool with 2.71, the highest team. That does make it a little bit of a concern for me, who's going without Salah. I look at those expected data and go, you've had higher than any other team. And you were playing away to Aston Villa. And that's a difficult place to go. And they still clocked 2.71. A lot of that fell Darwin's way. Darwin had an XG of over 1 himself. How he
He
didn't
was.
score, I don't know.
Oh, he just has to improve this finishing record. It's just not good enough.
Yeah.
I know that there is the conversion rates going around, and his is like 25% or something, and it doesn't look that bad. But I'm not even convinced that is true though, because I think there were 4 big chances in that game alone that I would count that he
He
should be
did get
scoring.
4. Yeah, he missed 4
Was
out of
there
4
4?
yesterday. Yeah.
And I mean, like that's just not good enough. This is an 85 million pound footballer, and I mean, you know how hard I am on the guy, but like every time I watch him, I'm just like, I don't understand this. Like you have to be better than this. Surely you're better than this, because you would not be able to get to this level without making better decisions than this, without being a better finisher than this. So it's so strange. But at the moment, as I've actually said on our podcast today, I did batter Darwin Núñez a bit today on Ranks FC. I mean, he's £85 million. At the moment, he will have to be considered as like one of the worst value signings we've ever seen. In terms of like what you've got for £85 million as a player. I mean, even Liverpool fans were like, just like, what are we watching here? What is going on?
When he was through 1-on-1, that's what got me. He had time and space. And when you got time and space and your team's already leading, you just give yourself, you go, okay, he's going to be confident here. He might try a dink, or even if he just goes for the boring finish, he finds the bottom corner and he drags it so far wide.
Yeah. I mean, everyone in the comments here is talking about confidence. Of course, that's part of it. But I mean, when you get to this level of the game as a forward, that's the one thing you have to have in abundance. You have to have confidence and self-belief, or you'll crash and burn. You won't survive. And he has to have that about him.
At some point, we'll have to raise the question and look into the data to go, Liverpool are getting huge amounts of XG, which is great, 2.71 in game week 17. But at what point is too much XG dropping Darwin's way and not enough Salah's? And how does that work against Salah? Because I look at that and think, yeah, it's great. This means Salah's going to get loads of chances too. But actually, and Darwin is the big chance hogger, if too many chances are falling to Darwin, that means potentially not enough are falling to Salah. And you know Salah doesn't need too many opportunities to score a goal like Darwin. So one to monitor there when they are playing this front two. Fulham 2.65. It was against 10 men, but they were all over Palace. And Mitro providing the assists and the goals. Love that.
Yeah.
United, go on.
There is a temptation. Like, I know I don't pick Mitro, and I haven't
You've
picked
got
him
him
all
at
season.
some point.
I mean, at this week, if I'm ever going to put him in with Callum Wilson, like suffering from illness, and Mitro playing Southampton at home, and I'm going like there is for the first time a temptation, I have to admit, to actually go with my boy. Like, I love him. He's so good. And I've just got to accept that me picking him is not going to have any effect on whether he does or doesn't score.
So true. Enjoyed seeing that. My plan was, and I think the Martial owners will say the same, if Martial and Havertz hadn't played well this game week, the easiest sell ever would have been to go straight to Mitro. Martial owners, I think you're probably going to stick now. Havertz owners, you're definitely going to stick now. How do we get Mitro in our team? Do we sell a Darwin? I'm not willing to sell Darwin ahead of Leicester at Anfield. But I do think if you don't own Mitro in game week 18, you're probably going to want him for that game week 19 where he's got the double. So at least in game week 18, you get one more week to assess Fulham, although I think we're going to see same again. But you've also got one more game for him potentially to pick up that yellow card. If he picks up a yellow card in game week 18, the game week 19 double, he'll only play one of those games. So again, you could be cautious over that yellow. But look, if you can easily get to Mitrovic, perhaps if you own Callum Wilson or other players, then I would suggest getting him in. United 2.46, impressive. Arsenal the same. And Chelsea, they've been averaging 1.0 all season, 1.74. It was against Bournemouth, however. So I'm really keen to see what they do away to Nottingham Forest, which is a much trickier fixture. But 1.74 is really good to know you can actually start to potentially back that Chelsea attack. And I'm looking at getting Mason Mount and Kai Havertz in my team ahead of that double. FPL focus. Next game week, could you play Andreas over Rashford? I don't know. I don't think you can. Andreas has got Southampton at home, which is nice, but he'll still be on my bench, I think. We've only got 7 minutes left of the stream, so we'll do 1 or 2 questions, but we want to do some transfer questions after the James replacement question, which is a really good one from Yaneda. I'd be looking at maybe waiting a week and then having 2 moves ahead of the double. But short term, I think you look, if you don't already cover Arsenal, Newcastle, Man City defence, then now the 3 you should be going towards. Botman is 4.4. You could go double Newcastle defence. You could go double Arsenal defence and bring in White if you've already got Gabriel. So you're saving a lot of money if you sell Reece James. You might even look at someone like a Walker. If Walker starts today and is a regular at 4.8, he could be a nice option. We just need to know he's going to start.
Yeah, totally. Right, Eddie says, is Diego Costa of Porto any good? Man United rumoured. Yeah, I mean, he's very, very good. Chelsea on his tail too. I'd say they're probably further ahead in this, actually, than Man United right now, from what I hear. Chelsea got a decision to make over what they're doing with their keepers. Most likely to move on from Mendy at this stage. It's still a possibility they move on from both, to be totally honest, and go with Diego Costa. Diego Costa would not be moving to be a backup to anybody. He's extremely good goalkeeper.
Is he?
And yeah, he would be a good signing for.
He was number one, wasn't he, for Portugal, ahead of Raul Patricio and Jose Sarr. So he's doing something right to be number one for Portugal because they've got good keepers.
Yeah, exactly that. So yeah, Eddie, that is one to look out for. I mean, we've still got the De Gea situation to deal with, and I think it's still more likely than not that De Gea does actually end up staying. All right, will United sign, or will it have to be loans as Glazers will be selling it at the end of the season? I think this is how you have to look at this, right? They were willing to buy Cody Gakpo, right? So that they knew that outlay was going to be £40 million if that was going to happen.
Yeah.
Suddenly, now we're like, well, they can only do loans. Well, that's a sudden change, and that's suddenly retrospective of where we were at. So I don't believe that United don't have any money at all. I don't think we're going to see an £80 million transfer. I don't think we're getting an Anthony or a Jadon Sancho coming at this stage. But I do think that they would be willing to spend some money to get that forward through the door. So yeah.
Interesting. Guys, we've got a couple of minutes left. We'll still be answering your questions. Before we do, 74 likes is awesome. There's nearly 300 of you watching. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We did a midday stream. If you're just joining, you can go back and watch the last 55 minutes, an hour-long stream, as always, on Chasing Green Arrows. But we haven't had many subscribers coming in. Now, that's great because many of you, I'm guessing, already subscribed, but I know there's going to be some newbies out there. So please do hit that subscribe button. We do these streams twice a week. We're back again tomorrow. Usually we're Mondays and Fridays at 7 p.m. Reviews and previews and loads of cool features on Chasing Green Arrows. Always Dean and myself. What do we think to Gakpo? We reckon he'll be an 8.5 midfielder. He'll definitely be someone that becomes an FPL thing, right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, obviously we need to see that price point first, just in case they try to price him out of a decision. But I just think when you consider what we've seen, or if you haven't seen, you go and see what he's done for in Eredivisie so far this season and look at the numbers that he's been clocking up. Then you consider what he was able to bring to the World Cup when he had his matches there, and consider too the technical positives to his game that are going to come into Liverpool's team. Certainly in full flow, I'd imagine by February. He might need a couple of games, a few weeks in January to find his feet, to settle into the country, all the rest of it. But I think, no need to rush into getting him. But look at February. Liverpool have got Wolves, they've got Everton, they've got Newcastle, and they've got Crystal Palace like that. And in between, they've got, of course, Real Madrid, but that doesn't affect us. But those Premier League games, I think, a massive opportunity for them, and they'll want him to be playing as soon as he can. So definitely one to look out for.
Question coming in from Mark. Spurs are a bit of a nightmare. And look, my notes for the game week, I had like 5 bullet points. I had Darwin and being an XG monster but being rubbish. Newcastle being really good. Arsenal having loads of FPL options. Mitrovic, 15 attempts out of 24 fell his way. And then I had Spurs, same old Spurs, defence can't be trusted. Like, it's the same old Spurs. Kane is reliable and a good option, but you're not going to get 15 pointers from him. You're going to get 6 to 8 pointers, which we've had all season. And that defence aren't worth investing in. And outside of Kane, Son's off his game. Kulu could be a tad expensive. It's Kane or no one. But at the moment, you just wait and see with Spurs.
Yeah, exactly that. And I also don't like the fact that the way that they go about kind of their matches. Even if you think back to before the World Cup, There was the 3-2 game against Bournemouth away. That was stressful. There was the 4-3 game against Leeds, and now on the back of that, they've had this Brentford game where they were 2-0 down, and they've had to claw their way back. So what you can say is like, yeah, they've got a great mindset about them now that forces them back into games, and they never know when they're dead. But from an FPL point of view, like even assets like Perisic now are becoming a little bit tainted by this because they're just not keeping clean sheets and they're not dependable. And if Perisic isn't regularly coming forward with assists or goals, he's kind of fallen off my radar at the moment because I'm like, well, I just don't trust them. I had Brentford actually to win this game. I thought they would edge it because I just didn't trust Tottenham. And when it was 2-0, I was like, well, this was quite a good prediction. I'm happy. Just don't trust them. Just don't trust them.
Yeah. Spartan's asking about the double game weeks. Look, in tomorrow's stream, we've got an awesome graphic to show you about the probability of the doubles, not who could play where. And we've all know Ben Crellin in his spreadsheet. This one's a little bit different. We're looking purely at the percentage chances of who will get doubles and when. We think it's more likely we'll get them ahead of the game week 19 fixtures rather than the game week 18 fixtures. So if you can, guys, rolling a transfer this week, if you don't have flagged players, I know a lot have got Reece James, but even your Reece James owners like myself, I'm still looking at maybe rolling my transfer so that I can have 2 ahead of 19 where we should know more about the doubles. So if you can hold, do. Good question from Ikono. Juranovic is actually one of Dean's favourite players, or was in the World Cup. You had him in your team, didn't you?
Did have him, yeah.
Did I see in gossip column this morning something like he's available at 8, 9, 10 million? Like, seems like a good option for a backup right back that could come into the first team.
Yeah, there's various reports around him. Basically, Celtic are signing another player that plays his position, but it depends who you speak to. Some people believe that isn't as a replacement to Juranovic, and they want to keep hold of him too. Yet there are other people that will tell you he's available for anywhere between 6 and 10 million. 6 million would seem an absolute bargain. So we'll have to wait and see. But he's a really good player. Man United went after him a little bit in the summer because Steve McLaren really liked him and recommended him to the club. And they didn't go ahead with it because they still had Wan-Bissaka. But obviously, if he gets offloaded, United could still come into that conversation.
Yeah, okay, definitely one to monitor. And we look forward to hopefully finding out about the Reece James injury not being too bad. But again, Chelsea will be more likely to buy if we think he's going to be out for a while. The Reece James private physio or private coach, fitness coach he has, posted like a rolling eyes emoji on Instagram with another emoji with like my lips are sealed off the back of the news. So clearly was disappointed. Yeah. It's been screen grabbed on a lot of like the Chelsea fan forums and stuff. So he clearly wasn't happy that Reece James was even playing last night. He was like, I can't speak. If I say too much, I'll get in trouble. It's like,
Reece James wanted to go to the World Cup and thought he'd have been fine. So he kind of hit both ways.
Yeah, exactly that. So there we go. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Before you leave, please do hit the like button and subscribe and get us to 3.9 or even maybe 4K by the end of tomorrow would be amazing. 282 of you are in the chat. But for now, guys, we'll be back tomorrow at 7 p.m. UK time. We'll be showing our teams, giving you our transfer thoughts, looking at the double game weeks, and also some cool data we've got for you tomorrow as well. So stay tuned tomorrow night, 7 p.m. But for now, he's been Dean, I've been Gianni, and we've both been chasing green arrows.